The alarm rang at 6:10 a.m., not loud, not gentle, just persistent. Emily Harper lay still, staring at the pale ceiling of her apartment in Columbus, Ohio. Morning light slipped through the blinds and settled on the wall like a question she didn't want to answer. Emily was 34. She worked as a remote customer support manager for a mid-sized software company. Her job paid the bills and left her tired in ways sleep didn't fix. She lived alone, except for the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the city noises that filtered up from the street. She reached for her phone, checked the time again, then opened the weather app. Cold, again. Winter had a way of making everything heavier: coats, steps, thoughts. She rolled to the edge of the bed, sat, and felt the familiar ache in her knees before her feet touched the floor. The mirror across the room waited. Emily avoided it at first, padding into the bathroom to brush her teeth. The sink creaked as she leaned forward. She caught her reflection accidentally: rounded cheeks, tired eyes, shoulders that sloped inward like they were trying to hide. Her weight had been with her for years, not suddenly, not dramatically. It arrived quietly, pound by pound, during late nights, stress eating, skipped workouts, comfort meals after difficult days. People talked about weight like it was a single decision. Emily knew better. It was 1,000 small choices wrapped around fear, loneliness, and exhaustion. She stepped on the scale. The number blinked, settled, and stayed. Emily stepped off quickly, as if the scale could judge her. Her chest tightened. She felt upset, not shocked, not surprised, just deeply, painfully tired of carrying the number in her head everywhere she went. She showered longer than usual, letting the water pound her shoulders. It helped a little. Steam fogged the mirror so she didn't have to see herself. When she dried off, she wrapped the towel tightly around her body, a habit from years of trying to feel smaller than she was. Getting dressed was a negotiation. Which jeans would fit without digging into her waist? Which sweater would hide her stomach but not look sloppy on Zoom? She chose black leggings and a loose gray hoodie. Safe, predictable. In the kitchen, Emily brewed coffee and stared at the cabinet where cereal, protein bars, and leftover pastries shared space. She hesitated. Breakfast felt like a test she was always failing. She poured coffee, added cream, skipped sugar, a small victory. Then she grabbed the pastry anyway. The first bite was warm and comforting. The second brought guilt. By the third, she wasn't tasting it anymore. She threw the wrapper away harder than necessary. Work began at 8 a.m. Her laptop sat on the dining table, surrounded by sticky notes and a water bottle she rarely finished. Meetings blurred together, smiling coworkers in small rectangles, cheerful voices talking about goals and metrics. Emily nodded, took notes, muted herself when she needed to sigh. At 10:30, her manager complimented her on handling a difficult client. Emily smiled at the screen and said thank you, but the praise slid off her. Compliments about her work never reached the place where the hurt lived. During a short break, she scrolled social media. Fitness influencers smiled at the camera, promising quick results and simple habits. Before and after photos filled her feed. Emily locked her phone and set it face down. At noon, hunger returned, tangled with boredom and stress. She heated leftovers and ate standing up, barely noticing the food. Afterward, she felt too full, too heavy, too aware of herself. She remembered the doctor's visit from last month, the gentle voice, the careful words. "We should talk about your weight, about your health." Emily had nodded then, just like she nodded in meetings. By afternoon, her back hurt. She shifted in her chair, stretched, promised herself she'd walk later. The promise felt thin even as she made it. At 5:15 p.m., she closed her laptop and stared at the quiet room. Evening was the hardest. No meetings, no distractions, just her thoughts. She put on a coat and stepped outside. The cold air bit her cheeks. She walked slowly around the block, counting steps without meaning to. A neighbor jogged past, earbuds in, light and fast. Emily felt a familiar sting of comparison. Back upstairs, she cooked dinner. Simple pasta, too much of it. She ate on the couch watching a show she'd already seen. Laughter from the TV didn't reach her. Later, she stood in front of the mirror again. This time, she didn't turn away. She lifted the hem of her hoodie and looked at her stomach, the stretch marks, the softness. "I'm tired," she whispered to the mirror, to herself, to the years of fighting her own body. She wasn't angry at her body, she was angry at the war. In bed that night, Emily opened a notes app and typed one sentence: "I don't want to hate myself anymore." She didn't know what came next, but the sentence stayed. The clinic parking lot was half full when Emily arrived, yet her hands were shaking as if she were about to walk into a crowded stadium. She sat in her car for several minutes, engine off, forehead resting against the steering wheel. The building in front of her was ordinary: brick walls, glass doors, a small sign with the clinic's name, but to Emily it carried years of fear. Doctor visits had never been neutral for her. They were filled with polite smiles that faded too quickly, with charts and numbers that spoke louder than kindness. She had learned how to nod, how to promise change, how to leave feeling smaller than when she arrived. Today, something felt different. She opened the car door and stepped out anyway. Inside, the waiting room was quiet. A heater hummed softly. Emily checked in and chose a chair far from the scale tucked against the wall. She crossed her arms over her chest, a protective habit she had developed without noticing. Her phone buzzed with a work email. She ignored it. For once, this hour was not for her job. It was for her. Emily Harper? She followed the nurse down the hallway. Posters about nutrition and heart health lined the walls. Emily avoided reading them. She had memorized enough advice to last a lifetime. When they entered the exam room, her eyes immediately found the scale. The nurse noticed. "We can skip that today," she said gently. "The doctor just wants to talk." Emily swallowed hard. "Thank you." She sat on the edge of the chair, hands clasped tightly together. When the doctor entered, she didn't stand over Emily or flip through papers. She pulled up a chair and sat at eye level. "How have you really been feeling?" the doctor asked. Emily let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's a dangerous question." The doctor smiled softly. "We have time." That was when the walls cracked. Emily talked about long work days spent sitting, about feeling trapped in her body. She talked about evenings that felt too quiet, about eating not from hunger but from loneliness. She talked about how people assumed she didn't care, when the truth was that she cared too much. "I know what people think," Emily said, staring at the floor, "that I'm lazy, that I don't try. But I've been trying my whole life." The doctor nodded. She didn't interrupt. "Weight gain is rarely about laziness," she said calmly. "It's usually about survival." The word hit Emily harder than any number ever had. Survival. Tears filled her eyes. No one had ever said that to her before. They talked about years of dieting, about losing weight and gaining it back, about how each cycle left Emily more exhausted and less trusting of herself, about how shame increased stress and stress made everything worse. "I don't want another extreme plan," Emily said quietly. "I can't survive another failure." The doctor leaned forward. "Then we won't do extremes. Health isn't punishment." They made small, realistic goals: 10-minute walks, regular meals, drinking water without turning it into a rule, moving her body in ways that didn't feel like hate. Then the doctor paused. "Have you ever talked to anyone about how this has affected you emotionally?" Emily shook her head. "I joke about it, but really talk? No. I'd like you to consider therapy, not because something is wrong with you, but because you've been carrying this alone." That difference mattered. When the appointment ended, Emily felt lighter, not fixed, but honest. Outside, she didn't go straight home. She walked slowly around a nearby park. The cold air burned her lungs. Her legs felt heavy. 10 minutes passed. She sat on a bench, heart racing. She wasn't proud, she was calm. That night, she cooked dinner slowly. She ate at the table. She noticed flavors instead of counting bites. When she felt full, she stopped. Not perfectly, but consciously. The next days were uneven. Some mornings she felt hopeful, other mornings she felt nothing at all. She learned that waiting for motivation kept her stuck. Doing small things anyway moved her forward. She booked a therapy session and almost canceled it twice. When she finally sat on the couch, she cried without knowing why. "It makes sense," the therapist said. No one had ever told her that before. Weeks passed. Emily learned her triggers: stress, exhaustion, loneliness. She learned to pause and ask what she really needed. Sometimes the answer was food. Sometimes it was rest. Sometimes it was connection. Then came the setback. A work trip, long meetings, restaurant food. A coworker joked, "We'll burn this off later." Emily laughed, then cried alone in her hotel room. She ate past fullness, shame wrapped around her chest. But the next morning, she didn't punish herself. She ate breakfast. She went for a slow walk. That was new. When she returned home, she stood in front of the mirror again. Same body, different relationship. She said out loud, "I'm still learning." And for the first time, that felt enough. Change, Emily learned, was not loud. It didn't arrive with dramatic music or sudden confidence. It arrived quietly, in moments so small she almost missed them. A glass of water before coffee, standing up during meetings, choosing to walk for 5 minutes instead of none at all. At first, these changes felt pointless. What difference can this make? She asked herself more than once, standing in her kitchen late at night, tired and doubtful. But she kept going. Not every day, not perfectly, just enough. Therapy became a weekly anchor. Some sessions were heavy, filled with old memories Emily hadn't planned to revisit. School locker rooms, family gatherings where comments about her body were disguised as concern, relationships where she had tried to shrink herself to be loved. Other sessions were quiet. In those, Emily learned something new: how to listen to her body without judging it. She learned the difference between hunger and habit, between comfort and avoidance, between rest and giving up. It wasn't easy. There were days when work overwhelmed her and she ate past fullness without even tasting the food. Days when she skipped her walk because the couch felt safer. Days when she looked in the mirror and felt the old disgust rise up fast and sharp. On those days, the voice returned. "You're back where you started." But now, another voice answered. "No, you're still here." Emily started tracking different things. Not calories, not weight, but patterns. She noticed she slept worse on days she skipped meals. She noticed her mood improved after even short movement. She noticed how social media affected her more than she wanted to admit. So she made changes there, too. She unfollowed accounts that sold shame as motivation. She followed people who talked about strength, patience, and respect for the body. Women who looked like her. Women who moved forward without pretending it was easy. At work, things shifted slowly. Emily asked for a standing desk. Her manager agreed without hesitation. She began taking short breaks during long meetings, stretching her legs, rolling her shoulders, reminding herself that her body was allowed to exist, not just support her productivity. One afternoon, during a team lunch on a video call, a coworker laughed and said, "I really need to lose weight after this week." The comment was casual, normal, but it landed heavy. Emily felt the familiar pressure to laugh along, to make herself smaller, to disappear into silence. Instead, she smiled politely and changed the subject. Her heart raced afterward. Her hands shook, but she felt proud. Public spaces were still hard. Clothing stores with narrow aisles, restaurant booths that felt too tight, strangers' eyes that lingered too long. Some days, Emily carried those moments home with her like extra weight. Other days, she let them go. She learned that progress wasn't about confidence, it was about resilience. Months passed. Her body changed slowly, not dramatically. Her doctor noted improvements: blood pressure steadier, energy levels higher, mobility easier. The scale moved sometimes, other times it didn't. Emily learned not to let it define the day. She celebrated different wins instead: walking without knee pain, cooking meals that felt nourishing instead of punishing, laughing more easily, saying no without guilt. One evening, after a long day, Emily stood in her kitchen holding a takeout menu. She was tired, emotionally drained. The old instinct told her food would fix the feeling. She paused, not to deny herself, but to ask herself something new. What do I actually need right now? The answer surprised her: rest. She put the menu down, heated leftovers, ate enough, then went to bed early. That night, she slept deeply. Setbacks still came: a stressful deadline, a family visit filled with subtle comments, a bad body image day that arrived without warning. But setbacks no longer erased everything. They were just moments, not conclusions. Emily stopped waiting to feel good enough to live her life. She bought clothes that fit her now. She went to events without planning escape routes. She took photos without hiding behind others. One Saturday morning, she joined a beginner-friendly walking group at a local park. She almost turned back when she saw the others: different ages, different bodies, all moving at their own pace. No one stared, no one judged. They just walked. Emily realized something then. She was not alone. She never had been. That afternoon, sitting on her couch with tired legs and a calm mind, Emily thought about the woman she used to be, the one who believed change had to hurt to count. She understood now. Change didn't need cruelty. It needed patience. It needed honesty. It needed time. She wasn't finished, but she was moving forward. And for the first time, that felt enough. Emily used to believe that strength meant control: control over food, control over her body, control over how much space she was allowed to take in the world. For most of her life, strength had looked like discipline and punishment, like pushing harder even when she was already exhausted. But real strength, she learned, looked different. It arrived slowly, without applause. Months passed, and life continued in its ordinary rhythm. Workdays came and went. Seasons changed. Emily's body changed too, but not in the dramatic way she once imagined. Some clothes fit more loosely, others didn't. Some weeks the scale moved, other weeks it stayed stubbornly still. What changed most was not her body. It was her relationship with it. Emily no longer woke up every morning with the first thought being, "What do I need to fix today?" Some days the old thoughts still appeared, but they didn't control the day anymore. She started noticing how far she had come. She could walk longer without pain. She could climb stairs without stopping to catch her breath. She slept deeper. She laughed more easily. Her mind felt quieter, less crowded with shame. At her next doctor's appointment, the conversation felt different. Her blood pressure had improved. Her energy levels were better. The doctor smiled, not the polite kind, but the genuine kind. "You've been taking care of yourself," she said. Emily nodded. For once, she didn't feel the urge to explain or defend herself. "Yes," she replied, "I have." Therapy continued, not as a crisis response, but as maintenance, like tending a garden instead of putting out fires. Emily learned to sit with uncomfortable emotions instead of numbing them. She learned that rest was not weakness, that boundaries were not selfish. She learned to forgive herself for the years she spent hating her body for doing its best to survive. Public spaces still tested her. There were still chairs that felt too small, comments that stung, moments when she caught her reflection and felt a flicker of the old discomfort. But now those moments passed through her instead of staying. She no longer felt the need to disappear. One evening, while cleaning her apartment, Emily found an old journal buried in a drawer. Inside were pages filled with goals from years ago: lose weight, be smaller, Finally be confident. She read them quietly, without anger. Then she closed the journal. That night, she stood in front of the mirror, the same mirror she once avoided. She wore a simple dress, not chosen to hide or impress, but because it felt comfortable. She looked at herself carefully. The softness was still there, the stretch marks, the curves, the body that had carried her through grief, stress, loneliness, and growth. Emily placed a hand over her stomach. "Thank you," she whispered. The words felt strange and true. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one who believed happiness was waiting on the other side of a number, the one who postponed life until she felt worthy. If she could speak to her now, she would say this: "You don't have to be finished to be deserving. You don't have to be smaller to be whole." Later that night, Emily opened the Notes app on her phone, the same one where months ago she had written a single sentence in the dark: "I don't want to hate myself anymore." She read it slowly. Below it, she added another line: "I choose to live with myself, kindly, honestly, fully." Outside, the city moved on as it always had. Cars passed, lights flickered in other windows. Life continued, imperfect, unfinished, real. Emily turned off the light and lay down. Tomorrow would bring choices, some good, some messy, none of them final. And for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel afraid of that. She felt strong, not because she had conquered her body, but because she had finally made peace with it.